One, hey, two, hey, one, hey, two, hey, three, hey, four, hey, ho, hey, ho, hey, ho, hey, ho. Everybody get up. Ho, hey, ho, hey, ho, hey, ho. Everybody get up. Everybody get up.
Welcome, Dark Side family!
What up?
Happy Black History Month!
Yeah, power to the people!
Yeah.
What are we doing today, Miss LaDios Muhammad?
Well, guess what we about to do? We about to do a review.
Ooh, another movie review!
And y'all know what it's going to be about. As you can see, the 70s gear. Hey, hey!
Judas and the Black Messiah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Woo.
Woo. First of all, I'm Rav'n, an actor with passion.
LaDios Muhammad, an actor with purpose.
And you're joining actors from the dark side.
Yeah. It's been a really good month. Really good month. So, wow.
Oh man, this movie blew my mind, LaDios. This movie blew my mind.
So many amazing concepts and straight black self.
Oh, it was Shaka King, right? That brought this masterpiece to us. I think maybe we should start off by going through our cast of characters before we start diving deep into this.
Right on. So we got the awesome Daniel Kaluuya.
He's so good.
Oh God. Okay. So you might, and he plays Fred Hampton, or is it Chiefman? Is it
Chairman
Chairman
Fred
Fred.
Hampton.
That's what he's known as, Chairman Fred. He's been in Get Out, Queen and Slim, and Black Panther. So, and
Right.
he's British.
Yes.
He's a very conscious British. I'm gonna tell you about an interview I talked about.
And-
I'll mention that.
Sure. And then you have LaKeith Stanfield, who plays William O'Neill. He was also in Get Out. Sorry to Bother You, and Knives Out. Knives Out was so good. Yeah.
Oh wow! And then we have what is it? Dominique Fishback.
Fishback.
Who
Yes.
plays Deborah Johnson, and she's actually the girlfriend of Chairman Fred.
Yep.
She's in The Deuce and Project Power.
Which we reviewed
I was
before.
trying to make what was the connection. I was like, she looks familiar, but I can't grasp her. She was a lot younger in there. And then also Night Comes On.
Yep. And then we have Lil Rel Howery,
Yep.
and he played Wayne. He was also in Get Out. Uncle Drew and Rel.
Yep. His own show.
His own show. Yep.
Yeah. And then one of the main characters as well is Jesse Plemons, who plays Roy Mitchell. He was in Breaking Bad, Kane Knight in Fargo. So these are it was amazing characters, but what I really enjoyed is the three, Daniel, LaKeith, and Lil Rel getting back together, working together, and that was just like the collaboration was amazing.
A little bit of magic, if I do say so myself.
It was a lot of magic. The acting was superb, but I'll say this. I've heard of the Black Panthers, a little bit of verbiage here and there. You know, it was ran by Huey P. Newton, and I think this was after Huey P. Newton was incarcerated.
Yep.
And so we take off with Chairman Fred.
Yes.
But I did not know this story.
Oh,
and he was a very young activist. He was
21. I believe LaKeith Stanfield, William O'Neill was only 19. It's very hard to imagine such young revolutionaries, but they were. I have a unique experience with the Black Panther Party just because I grew up in a very lily Hispanic borough of Colorado, and around 14-15 my mom moved me from Commerce City to Thornton, which was a very white borough of Colorado. And one of my good friends, Patricia Miranda, who her mother was head of LaBeaus and was a big-time Chicana activist, she started turning us on to the Black Panthers Speak.
Nice.
and I started going into Public Enemy. I got very militant around that age, but I was all about the Black Panthers, and to see this story come back out is just like, I don't know, like the fire under in my belly, I guess, because it's just so exciting to know that a new generation's going to know about this amazing political party. That's what they were, were actually a political party. They weren't terrorists. They weren't, it was like the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, but they were the Black Panther Party.
Yeah, and then one of the things that, and as we get into more of the dialogue of the story, by the way, spoiler alert, so if you haven't seen it, you need to stop right here.
Watch it, come back.
Yeah, watch it, come back. But the characters to me were very well developed. I connected with every single character, the main characters that we just mentioned. I connected with all their characters. But one of the things that I really enjoyed about this movie is it promoted Black love, Black pride, Black confidence in your community, which was very disheartening, and we'll get along the way about, why they're trying to dismantle the Black Panthers.
Sure, and going even further, the reason why the Black Panther Party was such a threat is because it wasn't just about Black people, it was about poor people, regardless of your color. And that's how they were able to form a rainbow coalition. That's how they were able to become a huge threat. One of my good friends, we watched it together as well, and she said to me, like, oh my God, dude, this is going to be this generation's Malcolm X. And I remember the first time I saw Malcolm X, one of the most disheartening scenes was the little blonde running up to him like, how can I help? How can I help? And he was like, get the fuck out of here. And I'm like, that's what the Panther Party didn't do. And that's why they had such a huge impact. The other thing that was going on during the time frame of this was the Chicago 7. And there's another movie right now that just came out with Bobby Seale and the Chicago 7. So I behoove everybody to get a little bit of research on that as well, because this time in America, 1969, our country was on fire, and people were, becoming so aware of the injustices and kind of fed up. And we're really starting to do something about the war in terms of Vietnam and all of these things. So there was so much activism, so many young people that were really in it, and it was an amazing time to see people, or at least hear about people that were really fighting for change. And I hope to see kind of a firestorm of this again, because it's really hopeful actually.
So just to camel back a little bit on that, the Black Panther Party did start with their Black community because of the impoverishment that they were experiencing within their community, the economical gap, the lack of food. One thing they did is they always had a lot of food banks, and they gave out free lunches to the children.
The reason why we have a public school free lunch and breakfast program is directly because of the Black Panther Party, because of what they were doing, feeding so many children in California. And the other thing that was happening, which is very parallel to what started happening around 2016, is a whole lot of Black men were getting shot by the police indiscriminately, especially in California where Reagan was governor. And that was so much of their revolution was, we are going to arm ourselves, and we are going to protect ourselves because we're tired of the tyranny, if you will. So they were interesting, weren't they?
They started with their community, and they made sure that they were protecting their community. They weren't trying to hurt anyone, but they were more of, we just want our community protected and safe with, without the drugs. One thing about, what did I say? His name is Chairman Fred, was that he went even to like the drug dealers, the gang members, to unite, because he was trying to clean up the community, starting with Black people. And then what I thought was so brave is that he went into the KKK meeting and started speaking to them to find the common ground. Like, we have something in common.
Yeah,
we're all being oppressed. And then he went into the
Latin Kings
community, and and he brought them together.
Mm-hmm.
But the pride of self-love, because when you came in, it wasn't just you could join into this party. You had discipline. There was things you had to learn. There was pinpoints, and I love that because that is the same thing that when you come into the Nation of Islam, it's about structure and discipline and getting and uniting and learning things about yourselves. And so he started the pride within oneself before he started branching out to other communities to bring in the common goal, which made him very powerful along the way. So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing to say.
Yeah. So going back to kind of the synopsis or the plot of the movie, we start out in Chicago. As a lot of people know, the Panthers were really big in California and Oakland, but there was also in Chicago. Well, there were chapters all over the friggin' country. But Fred Hampton was chairman of the Chicago chapter, and we really start in Chicago. And I believe the movie starts out at a little hole-in-the-wall bar, and we find LaKeith Stanfield with a trench coat and kind of a cop persona going in, and he's shaking someone down and trying to get this really nice cherry red ride, and ends up getting into an altercation. The other people realize that ain't no cop, and as he's getting away, the cops stop him. And next scene, we're in with the FBI and LaKeith Stanfield, and he says, "So how did you feel when Martin Luther King died?" And I believe his response was, I don't know. I mean, I guess I was sad. I don't know. And then he asked about Malcolm X, and he said, I never thought about that.
Why do you think he asked him about that?
Because he was looking for an uneducated, uncaring, not in the struggle person. And there's always short-sighted people. There's always going to be short-sighted people. And it's usually trauma that does that, right? If your trauma is so bad that all that you're doing is surviving, you're not thinking about the bigger picture. You're not thinking about how that's going to hurt somebody else. You're thinking about your survival, and that's it. And I think that was very much who William O'Neill was.
Yeah.
He was a person that was hurt from circumstance and whatever, and he was too damn short-sighted to see the bigger picture. And it's almost so disheartening how much he doesn't take in, right? And we'll go into that more, but yeah, I thought that was very telling that once he got, the FBI agent got those two answers of, this guy doesn't really give a crap about what's going on with his people. It's like, well, you can do 18 years or 5 years, 18 months, or you can go free. And that's kind of where we start out.
He was super apathetic to what was going on as far as the conscious community. But you hit the nail on the head with that by saying that he was in survival mode.
Yes.
I don't think he cared one way or the other, which is But one thing he said that I thought stood out, and it's still a mentality today, is he said, "Why didn't you just go in and carry a gun? Why didn't you carry a badge?" And he says, because people fear the police, the badge, more than they do a gun.
They got an army behind them.
And they have an army behind them. So to me, that tells you the mentality, even to this day, when it ties in police brutality and the influences of the police in the community and how we view them. That's a very powerful piece. Because I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. He went in with the badge. As soon as he went in with the badge, everybody was like, oh my God. That basically opened the door to his connection of getting him involved. So he had to basically make a choice of, you're going to jail for 5 years, which you might do 18 months, or you end up maybe, go and be undercover snitch.
Yeah.
And that's how he started to investigate into the Black Panther Party and begin to dismantle. But I think at some point he found a little bit of compassion. When he said, at one point,
at the beginning, he says they're not terrorists.
Yeah, he says that. He goes, I don't know what you're looking for. He goes, they're putting me through hell. And then there's at one point he says, okay, I did what I did. I'm out. And he was like, oh no. You're not done? He's like, I did what you asked me to do. And he was like, no, remember, you had 5 years. So he basically was dangling a carrot on him and had him on a leash and said, if you run, I'll find you.
Sure.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and you start out, they kind of do a pretty good, I think actually, no, it goes into Fred Hampton's speech. And I don't know if they're at a community event, but he really goes off about like, oh, you wearing dashikis and, good thing for Malcolm X College, but what that's really going to do for you and all of this other stuff. And one of the patrons gets really upset and walks away. And this is when we meet Dominic Fishback, and she stands up and says, I'm studying English, and you're using words up there, and you might want to use them more widely instead of chasing off the people you're trying to recruit.
Right.
I think I fell in love with her that scene, right? I mean, she's just so, it's this adorable mixture of coy and courage. That it was just very lovable to see her kind of stand up to somebody that she obviously is crushing and intimidated by, but she has to say something, and she does such a great job of sending that emotion. When we saw her in Project Power, I'd never picture her in a romantic role, and I read an article this last week that said that she was actually picked for this role because of her work in an HBO show, and she was so thankful that the director saw her in this romantic lead, which all kind of surprised her herself, right? But she just did a wonderful job, and I think she really stole America's hearts because her acting was stellar throughout.
It was very good. It was very contrasting to her previous character. I mean, she was very soft and gentle, but she was very involved in what she believed in. It was, I mean, she really presented the character very well. I was very impressed. And she wasn't as vulnerable as she perceived to be. But because, and that goes on because she's still carrying on the legacy of that chapter.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So then you have a couple of montages. I think LaDios was talking about how you have the education programs, the food programs. To be a Black Panther meant that you were a well-rounded, excellent person. You did not, I think, within that montage, you see William O'Neill trying to flirt with some girl, and he gets reprimanded because he's like, hey, that's not how you treat your sister. That's your sister in arms. That is your sister, so you act like it. Because Panthers were very much about respect, not only for self, but for women, for children. Everybody please go out and get the Black Panthers speak. I mean, just everybody, just do it. The Panthers message is profound, and it's sad what our government did to destroy it, because they were on the brink of really unifying a lot of people in America. And so you have this montage. You see William O'Neill bugging the place, right? And what happens? I believe he's asked by the FBI agent, what do you need? What do you need? I think this is when he says, they're not terrorists. What do you want? Blah, blah, blah. And they're torturing me because they just got done making him do push-ups and all of that. And William O'Neill says, I need a car. He's like, the Panthers are always getting sweated by police and this and that. So if you want me to get close, get me a car. And they get him a car, and he's kind of now the driver, right?
Basically they were putting bunk charges on Fred Hampton on a regular, so he just started walking.
And then we see kind of the mega recruiting effort, right? So the first one is going into a bar where the crowns are. We don't really know who these people are. We just know it's a really rough bar. When those guys step in, they're getting pool balls together and shirts, and they're ready to kind of put these strangers in their place. Who the hell are you coming into our territory? And I believe Fred Hampton says something along the lines of could you imagine
what we could do?
Yeah, what we could do together, and I want a meeting. I want a meeting with the head of the Crowns. Now, I thought this was really interesting, and I kept saying, who could this Chicago gang be? And it is a fictitious gang. I think it was more based on the disciples or gosh, there were over 60 pretty prominent gangs. But what people don't really realize is back in the 60s and 70s, because of Martin Luther King, because of Malcolm X, most of these quote-unquote gangs were community activists that were trying to help their fellow black, community members.
Yeah.
Like when they finally get their meeting with the Crowns, the first thing they do is say, we feed more people than goddamn General Mills, So everybody was active in trying to help their community. What an amazing time.
Well, that's interesting you mentioned that, because gangs were not created to cause discord in the community. That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
What I thought was interesting, and it's still infiltrated today, is how the FBI started writing up these letters, posters, and infiltrating discord between the gangs, and saying things to make one another think that they're trying to, overcome them or oppress them or, dismantle the whole project because of the unity. And that's something interesting, because of the whole thing. They know that they're not being a threat. They know they're not doing anything to anyone. They know that they're rehabilitating their community. The whole fear was that they would unify.
Yep.
And they totally went in to dismantle that whole project. But, with, propaganda and lies and gossip. And so that was super interesting. So even one thing I liked about Chairman Fred is that he was super calm, cool, and collective. He didn't get ruffled. Now, he did have like that cigarette thing, that smoking. Oh my God. I was like, boy, do you ever not? But that may have been like his vice to keep him that way.
Yeah.
But he was super thoughtful, very strategic. He didn't get ruffled. And I think that was something that played good in him as, really being an activist in the community to bring people together.
But he was very, very passionate, and he did get very in your face about, if you watch a couple of his documentaries, his style, and I think Daniel Kaluuya kind of downplayed it a little bit, because Fred Hampton actually was very insinuating and in your face and almost to the verge of yelling. And that was a lot of what they were kind of coming back with. You need to that was his girl. You need to soften up a little bit. You need to chill out, because he was very much he pushed the envelope. But at the same time, that whole speech that he does a little bit of a speech where, and I'm jumping ahead, but this is anyways, he says, I'm not going to die a normal person death. I'm going to die a revolutionary's death. And I think that was part of the cigarettes. If you know that your time is short, you're not giving a shit about the long term, I just gotta, I'm just going to soothe myself kind of thing.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
Mr. King.
You look like, Mr. King had some.
Please interject,
Yeah,
Mr.
please
King.
interject.
So with the cigarettes, you guys also got to remember this too.
Everybody
the 70s
smoked back
and
then.
the 60s,
Everybody
smoked.
Right.
And they chain smoked.
Right.
You know
Yes.
what I'm saying? So I have to give them a lot of credit for that, because there were a lot of little small nuances that they actually threw in there to try to show you just how they was really living.
Yeah.
They was really smoking all the time.
All the time.
The way that they talked, the way that they acted, the places that they went to. So they did a really
They
good
did.
job.
They
Okay,
did.
I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean
No, I agree 100%.
I was
100%.
watching, that was just a personal opinion of observation, oh my God, he just smoked so much. But I did watch an interview with Daniel Kaluuya, and I did not realize how much of an activist he is. And of course, as you all know, he's British. And he said there's a lot of discrimination and police brutality in the Brit, but he said it's very subtle.
Sure.
It's very subtle. But one thing he said that he did, he said, when it was proposed to him, when someone said, hey, they wanted him to play this character after he did Black Panther, he said he went and read all the books. He really, he said, I abandoned myself. I read all the books. I listened to Malcolm X every day. And they were like, oh, so you did method acting? He said, no. He said, I didn't do method acting because method acting, you're just calling that person, that character, you're in character all day, every day. He said, I'm just saying I abandoned myself. He said, I went to the family and I spoke to the family for I think he said I don't know, 14 hours
Wow.
to obtain information about his character, like his
great.
cigarette smoking, his demeanor, his
Mhm.
calmness. He said, but I didn't go there just to collect information. I came there to understand his plight, you know?
Yeah.
And so he said, so this is that he felt like he embodied him. I've never watched any previous documentaries of him being in his face, and I don't know if the vision was what is her name, Deborah Johnson's vision of like who he became when they got together, like how he was prior to having her, because sometimes when you have a loved one and a baby on the way, it does change the dynamics of how aggressive or assertive you're going to be in the community. But one thing I did like, he said, the thing about the Black Panther, it wasn't fight fire with fire, it's fight fire with war. And he is like, breaking down the war of education, the war of the minds, the war of black love. He said one thing he loved, he said this was about self-love, black love, and then expanding that to other communities, because we can help others, but we still have to help ourselves first. And I thought it was just a powerful interview of how he broke down the character development, and I have to give my kudos off to him. I really, like I said, I've never known Chairman Fred prior to this. I'll have to go do my research, but what I seen on was just enormous acting. And for LaKeith Stanfield coming in, he said it was very a big discord because he was playing a character or someone that was totally contrary to who he really was.
Sure,
Yeah.
I wondered about that. I love LaKeith Stanfield's take on his character. Every time he got away with something, he always did this little
Yeah,
that was his tell,
Yes.
right? And it was so creepy and eerie and right on the frockin' money, because you want to think like, yeah, he got off on it a little bit. He kind of got off on this role that he was playing, and he did a great job of letting us buy into that, because that's what we should believe, and we should know your motivation. Oh man, I don't want to jump ahead, but there are some.
No, you can totally jump ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not really doing this in sequential
Thank you.
order.
Okay,
We can
great.
just
So,
jump
like
around.
toward the end,
Yeah.
with the one of the biggest things is the assassination of Fred Hampton, which was an FBI raid, where the Black Panthers shot one shot to their 99, and Fred Hampton was drugged. Almost everybody else got out of the house, but they made sure Fred Hampton was dead.
Yeah.
Of course, LaKeith Stanfield's character drugs him, William O'Neill, and the moment when we see LaKeith make that decision, when he asked, Chairman Fred, can I freshen up your drink? That expression, almost tearful, I know what I'm doing, I'm committing to this. It was cheers. I'm just like, kudos,
Yeah.
you knew your motivation, you knew what you were playing, and I love it when you can embody that. And
I wanted to cry for him.
yeah, it was, and you don't, you should be hating this person, yet you're empathizing. And that's a great thing to be able to do, because he was not playing a character that you would walk away loving. But like I said earlier in the show, I think he was a victim of circumstance. I think he was a victim of trauma. And it's a sad tale all around, right? Everybody ended up being kind of...
I often wonder, the William O'Neill, how do you get so close to someone? And because at one point he's protecting him when they were at the pool hall, he protects him, because they were,
But
the
wasn't that his game?
The game was, the gang was ready to, bash, Fred Hampton, but he went in to protect him, to start this loyalty with him. But at the same time, this character was so apathetic, because how do you go in day in and day night, and not have some type of compassion or develop some type of love for the person that you spend pretty much 24/7 with every day, in and out. I I just always wondered in real life, how I think at some point in time, this character really had to deal with the consequences of who he was as a person. Hence, him killing himself. Suicide.
Right, that's the end of the tale. But even what was so telling is his response to the interviewer, because how did he do it? He lied to himself. He lied to himself consistently. And when we finally get that clip of what William O'Neill actually says in Eyes on the Prize, Part 2, and he says, I was part of the struggle. I wasn't one of those people that just sat back in their armchair and blah. I wasn't some armchair revolutionary. No, I was in it. And I'm like, man, you are just drinking your own Kool-Aid, ain't you? And obviously, it lasted about an hour after he actually saw himself and saw the documentary, right? So I wonder, that made me wonder, was he telling himself a tale the whole time, that until that TV show, until that actual airing of this is what happened, and this is what the FBI did, and this is what the cops did, and this is what you did, William O'Neill.
Yeah.
That was the actual realization.
The man in the mirror.
Wow.
You know, and it baffles me how some people can shut it on and shut it off like that, and be a part of that dark. And we all have a light and dark, but that really dark side of infiltrating discord into something that's harmless, peaceful, and loving.
Wow. Yes.
And I can't even fathom living with myself. Like, I would totally be on drugs.
Oh, I said thousands of times, like, gosh, why didn't he just walk away, right? He didn't have to drug him. He didn't have to. There were so many times. And honestly, if it were me, I think I would have. Honestly, I would have. Even if I were a little low down, I would have just given myself enough leeway to find a friggin' ticket to get the hell out of the fucking country and just leave it all behind, right? Because the feds were giving him so much leeway. Like, if you got that kind of thing going, run away. But I think he was actually kind of thick. I actually said when he goes up to Fred Hampton with the CB4 and says, hey, let's go bomb the mayor's office and all that.
Crazy.
And I'm like, this mofo has an IQ of 40. Because, I mean, how thick are you to be in the party, to be listening to them drop knowledge day in, day out, and still be stupid enough to suggest something like bombing the damn mayor's office?
Totally, I'm fed up, I'm frustrated, I'm getting it from the FBI in, I'm getting this in. I just want to just blow something up because I'm tired. And he could have just been between a rock and a hard place. And he wasn't really processing his actions versus, I just want this to be over. If we blow it up, we all go to jail, and I don't have to be in this space anymore. It could have been a numerous of things. I just thought his character was so believable that I did not like him.
Oh no.
After and then even watching the interview at the end, I'm like, this is the guy? You really believe that? But then when I started reading the verbiage that he committed suicide, well, then you got your due diligence.
Yeah.
I thought the movie was good. I mean, I wasn't as, honestly, I was not like encouraged or really motivated to watch the movie, only because I knew what was going to happen. It was another movie where one of our greats, if you elevate them after they die, you don't elevate them when they're here and they're present, and that's very disturbing when we have great Black leaders that are living, that now you want to tell their story. And I wasn't as thrilled to watch the movie, but I was very happy that I did, because it did educate me and inspire me to go on and like do a little bit more research and find out about this character and have a great appreciation, for the Black Panther Party. Not that I didn't before, it just never, like, I was not connected to it. In that retrospect, I appreciated it, I respected it, I understood it, but I wasn't really connected to it.
Yeah. It's so funny because me and LaDios are such opposites, right? And that's exactly like I'm listening and I'm like, that's how I feel about the nation. But I was totally full on with the Black Panther, so it's funny that we're both on those. Whatever. Anyways, what would you have given this in terms of your rating?
For the acting, I'm gonna give them an A+. The acting was stellar. The acting was beautiful. Like I said, I connected with all the characters, even with and we failed to mention Roy Mitchell, who played the FBI agent.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
yes, he was very good.
He
Yes.
was very believable, even in some instances when he knew how the FBI was infiltrating the the posters and everything. He was like, really? And then how they sent somebody like an undercover to kill, the murder. He's like, so you sent an undercover agent to kill one of the Black Panther parties, and that's murder. And he's like, yeah, well, we got it all figured out. And he was just kind of, you can see him even like dwelling, like, well, I can't really.
The conflict.
You can see him dwelling like, I'm not. I got a family. You know what I'm saying? I got kids. Now I got to do it. And so it's kind of the parallelism of William O'Neill and Ray Mitchell's lives were almost identical. They almost were really both a victim of their circumstances. Like, what am I going to do now?
They were both very complex characters and conflicted characters. And I think they both brought that to the fore. Roy or Ray Mitchell? Ray Mitchell,
I'm sorry, Roy Mitchell.
Roy Mitchell, yes, Roy Mitchell. I mean, there's one point where he's infiltrating the party and he's in the crowd looking kind of like a hobo. And you're like, oh crap, there he is. Yeah. But he's committed and, not only, in the movie, but just, this individual is committed to what he has to do. So it's an interesting dichotomy and definitely fun to watch, right? Because again, every actor did such a great job of bringing these characters to life and making them so relatable. And I think my rating overall, I'm just going to give it an A. Acting A+, set design like A+,
costumes were very
costume. Actually, forget that. I'm getting an A+. Yep, I'm being generous today. It gets an A+.
So everybody should see this movie. I think, and this is my biases, because there's just always more to, my biases, my subconscious biases of the Black Panther. I loved the acting. They got A+. I loved the background, the music. I was okay, but the movie for me, I was like B-. I just wasn't thrilled to see another movie that we're not really, we're trying to raise the dead and we're not dealing with the living. So, but the educational piece, I'm good. So my score, B-. Hers A+ across the board. Acting for me A+, and I guess that's all we got, huh?
Yeah. Like I say, this generation's Malcolm X. So I'm hoping this wakes some people consciousness up and gets people doing some research and
I do want to say something. You keep mentioning Malcolm X. I do want to mention
that movie was so good. That was my '90s
So you're saying this movie was the Malcolm X for us in '93,
right? For the teenagers of this generation, I think this movie is going to be what Malcolm X was for me when I was 16.
Yeah.
Like Malcolm X woke me up, made me realize so much, right? That I just didn't know about in terms of the 60s and what Malcolm X went through and his life. Spike Lee was amazing. That's still one of my favorite movies of all time. And this goes right up there with it. Like, I can't wait for my kids to be a little bit older so that they can see it and that kind of stuff, because it was educational. And people need to wake up. Like, like the separateness, it doesn't really behoove us. Like, if we could come together as a people, like, we can make real lasting changes in our policing, in our society, in terms of healthcare. Like, like if we would wake up and realize we're all in this together and we all need these benefits, we all deserve it. Like, maybe we could see some real lasting change in this country.
Yeah, I'm totally for change in it. And even though it's a slow progress and it's moving slow, it is movement. But I would be remiss to say this. I know people pump up Malcolm X a lot, and I have nothing but love for Malcolm X, but you cannot separate Malcolm X from the nation, because Malcolm X would never be Malcolm X had he not met the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And everything he was taught was taught through the Nation of Islam. Everything he learned, all his disciplinaries, the person who he became was because of the nation. So I'd be remiss to let that go, because somehow along the way they've disconnected the two, and you can't, that's like saying 1 + 1, or you can't get 2 without 1 + 1. So
Sure.
I just want to make sure that everybody out there knows you cannot disconnect the two. Go back and do your research, show the connection, the love, and that we all are intertwined. Even the Black Panther Party took all those bullet points of what they were doing for the community from the Nation of Islam. So with that, thank you so much for chiming in. Remember to get up and get out and do something for yourself. I'm LaDios Muhammad, actor with purpose.
And I'm Rav'n, an actor with passion.
And we are actors from
the dark side.